Gerald, what did you like from the Texas Longhorns? Let's jump in and start with the good here.
Yeah, it's hard not to say the defense, right? This is we're looking at, I think, a generational performance from the Texas defense throughout the entire season, right? Like I said, I've been following the team for 2.5 decades almost, and this is one of the better units I've seen dating back to this is rarefied air, but like those 04-05 years where that defense really propelled them to a national championship. And so the defense looked really good. They were fast. They were physical. They really did a great job of playing on the other side of the ball. As you get to know me, if you're kind of new to me, I am a big believer in like the trenches. And that's what Texas really did a great job defensively. They tied a season high with 6 sacks. I think it was like 11 tackles for loss, something stupid like that. So like being able to create havoc in the backfield for Kentucky, keep their offense off pace. They had an average distance to go of like longer than 7 or 8 yards. So like the ability to win at the point of attack and keep Kentucky off schedule, we saw that pay dividends over and over. And ultimately, Kentucky's not a team that can win passing the ball every down. And so Texas was able to pin its ears back and create that havoc in the backfield. Colin Simmons had a great day. Anthony Hill jumped to the team lead in sacks through that game. He pulled down 2, I think, in that game and put him at the team lead for 7.5, I think is the number, which is absolutely silly. But like the defense, especially that front 7 at the point of attack in the trenches, Kentucky's a team that wants to win there, wants to win at the point of attack, wants to win on the line of scrimmage. And Texas didn't allow them to do that. They were bigger, they were more physical, they were faster. And that to me is the difference in the game. Texas really dominated it. Negative 21 yards, I think in the fourth quarter was the number, which is absolutely stupid from the running games. Like that to me is the best we've seen in a long time. And 2 weeks ago, folks were wondering Florida was able to put up some yardage on the ground, and Arkansas had that streak in the third quarter where they were able to run the ball really successfully. But I think that was the exception rather than the norm. And I think what we saw against Kentucky is probably closer to what we should expect.
Yeah, and piggybacking off that point, I talked about this. A lot of Florida's like rushing stats in that game were garbage time. Like that game was over at halftime. Everything after that to me didn't mean much. It was 35-0. I don't really care what a team does after that point. And also what I like about this team is when a team has to run the football, when there's that down, they need 2 to 3 yards. They do not get that. Kentucky had opportunities to do that in the game, and they did not do that. I will say this: the only thing that concerned me, Cutter Boyle did come in and make some plays with his arm in that game. Obviously, limiting tape-wise, there's not much there that we could scheme and look at, but he did play pretty well in that game. And that concerns me because he did find some openings in some zones and stuff of that nature. So maybe that someone else can exploit that down the road. I will say we've gotten pretty lucky with the quarterbacks we have played. Now, the secondary is still really good. I'm not saying they're not. But the thing is, too, piggybacking off that this year there is no great quarterback other than Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, who most likely we're not going to play Shedeur Sanders in the playoff. The only possibility if we do get to the playoff we play is Cam Ward. I don't think there is a quarterback that can exploit the secondary like there was last year. Last year there was Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix. You don't have those guys running around in college football this year. This is a down year quarterback-wise. So I don't really see anyone that's going to be able to do that. But I will say Cutter Boyle did impress me with that. Overall, I thought that, like you said, the defense was phenomenal. I think Sark today in his press conference talked about, hey, we've had 12 sacks over the past 2 weeks, and 5 guys have had those sacks. It's not just 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys. It's 5 guys that have combined with those 12 sacks. So that's super impressive to me. On top of that, Colin Simmons, I thought had plateaued at some point during the season. And then Arkansas and Kentucky just comes out and obliterates. So he's been phenomenal. Really, other than the Georgia game, he's been really good. And it's really exciting to see. Barron Sorrell also had a sack last week. Trey Moore starting to get it going, 2.5 sacks the last 2 weeks. So really exciting from this defensive front. And Anthony Hill's just special. Why he didn't get invited for the Butkus Award is insane to me. I do not understand it. Yeah, I know. They chose – listen, Danny Stutzman deserved it. Danny Stutzman's had a great year, no doubt. But you have to have – Anthony Hill, deserves to be invited. I'm not saying he has to win, but for him not even to be invited for that award is absolutely asinine to me. I do not understand it.
The Stutzman one, and this is going to be my first inflammatory statement. We're 8 minutes into my first broadcast. Stutzman's almost feels like a lifetime achievement award
Yeah.
in a little bit, where like he's been consistently one of the best linebackers in college football, and this may not have been his best year. And I think especially coming off of the last couple of weeks, he's been really good. Like there's no two ways around it. But like it almost feels like Stutzman hasn't gotten it yet, and we need to at least get him in the conversation because he's been consistently for the last 3 years, since his freshman year, one of the best linebackers in the country. And I love that you mentioned Trey Moore. There are a lot of people in like Longhorn online circles that owe Trey Moore some apologies, right? Like Trey Moore, people came in with outsized expectations for him, right? The guy had double-digit sacks at UTSA, right? Different level of competition, but the people that I really like respect their opinions and the ones that like ball knowers, right? Like that thing, like Trey Moore has been on their radar because of the non-flashy things he does. Like he's able to set an edge. He's able to minimize cutbacks. He has not seen a speed option that he doesn't want to blow up single-handedly. He just does the lunch pail stuff that I love to see. And so I'm glad that he's been able to put some stuff on the stat sheets that folks are able to really see him shine in that way, because a lot of what he does doesn't show up on the stat sheets. A lot of what he does doesn't show up for, again, and no shade at anybody, but like a lot of stuff that he does well is things that aren't going to show up on the stat sheet, right? And again, different level of competition from last year. Texas brought him in for an edge presence, but when you've got a Colin Simmons, when you've got an Anthony Hill, you need a guy who's playing the role like Trey Moore, who shows up and does the dirty work, who does the punch in, punch out, lunch pail, hard hat kind of stuff. And so I'm glad you mentioned him because that dude deserves a ton of credit.
Yeah, 100%. And he's asked to do a lot on this defense. He's not just putting his hand in the dirt and going after the quarterback. You see him a lot of the times he's standing up and covering people. There was a play, I forget who came on the blitz. Oh, when Jahdae Barron got a sack versus Arkansas, he's covering, I believe, a tight end or running back down the sidelines out of the backfield. I'm like, okay, well, I didn't think that was in like his tool bag. And at UTSA, it really wasn't, because guess what? He's a freak at that level. So we want him to get after the quarterback. At this level, he's not a freak, but he's still a really good pass rusher. But hey, he can also do this as well. So it's something that he's capable of doing, and we're showing it at Texas. And I think that's really good by PK. I mean, I'm a fan of the Broncos, and with Von Miller, listen, he's great with his hand in the dirt and everything. But once in a while, if you want to throw him back out there and show, hey, we can drop him into coverage once in a while, that's also an important thing, because it's breaking tendencies. Like you have to do that on the defensive side of the ball too. Like you always know, hey, when this guy's in the game, he's going to come after the quarterback no matter what. They can scheme around that. They can chip you a lot. If you put him up there and you don't know, hey, he could be dropping into coverage. Hey, he could be coming. We don't know. That's an important thing too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is one of the things Pete Kwiatkowski has done a really good job of in his 4 years, and especially, as the defense has started to flourish, is allow players and allow folks to show more things in their repertoire, right? Jahdae Barron is probably the case in point, like the key example of that. That guy's been all over the field. That positionless football thing that PK and Sark talk about a lot, like Jahdae Barron has kind of been a Swiss Army knife. And seeing Trey Moore drop back in coverage, pop out in his own, right? And that is not only good for the team and good for the defense, but like NFL teams are going to see that on film, right? And it's going to get him drafted. And when we talk about creating a culture where folks want to come, being in a system like that where the coach is going to show off multiple things that are going to get the dozens of NFL scouts on site to get excited about you. That's why Texas has become a transfer destination for a lot of guys who are looking for 1 or 2 years of a pop to get themselves a little bit of a shine in the NFL. So I love seeing that from Pete Kwiatkowski's system. And again, there were like PK is probably, if he wants the big job, is going to get poached at some point. So I think we need to start reconciling with the fact that like Pete Kwiatkowski, if he wants the big job, we'll find the big job sooner rather than later, because this defense has transformed in the last 4 years. It's been insane.
Yeah, 100%. Just like the biggest thing is tackling. I mean, we don't miss tackles anymore, guys. I mean, that 2 to 3, when Sark got here, everyone was complaining like we're missing 8, 9 tackles a game. I mean, we might miss 2 to 3 a game now. And then if we miss, there's like 5 other guys around, so it doesn't really matter anyway. So they're flying around, they're playing good fundamental football, and it's just something good to see. Offensively, I would say Gunnar Helm. Coming into the season, I thought, like 2 years ago, I'm going to straight up admit, I thought Gunnar Helm was like, I don't really see much of an NFL future there. Then I saw him play last year when Jatavian Sanders started. I was like, okay, well, I was wrong. This guy can definitely play in the NFL. And then this year, I was all on board. Mark asked me who are like the breakout guys on this offense or defense. So I chose one of each. I chose Gunnar Helm on the offensive side of the ball. I chose Jalen Gilbo on the defensive side of the ball. And Gunnar Helm's been phenomenal. We're talking about a guy I think is going to be drafted higher than Jatavian Sanders was. Like, I think he's going to be a second-round pick. Jatavian Sanders was a fourth-round pick. And we're talking about a guy that's putting up the same sort of stats. He had 2 touchdown catches again. The one in the end zone was honestly a really good throw by Quinn, but also a very good catch by Gunnar Helm.
Yeah, no, that was an absolute dime. And I think that's one of those things that I think makes fans both like excited and frustrated with watching Quinn Ewers, because like you see the flashes where like he makes a throw that maybe 4 other guys in the country can make, and then you see some struggles. And this week is a little bit of an outlier because of his ankle and the injury and all that. And we could talk about that. We talk about the bad from the game, but like that catch. And I got to listen to some of the game, listening to Craig Way. I was driving throughout a little bit of the half, so listening to Craig Way talk about that play, absolutely incredible. Craig Way, just absolute like gem. We were so lucky to have him. But you talk about Gunnar Helm. It feels like almost like we've given him his flowers so often, it feels almost old hat, right? We have gotten used to the level of play from him, and he finds a way to surprise us each and every week. Like you expect Gunnar Helm to do something incredible, and then he finds a new way to really show that off. The other thing I want to talk about, the offensive line, again, you're going to get tired of hearing me say this, but Kentucky going into this game was averaging like 5 or 6 sacks a game. Like they are tackles for loss a game, multiple sacks a game. Texas gave up 1 sack, gave up 4 tackles for loss. And so like as maligned and as much negative attention as we've been given to the offensive line for the last several weeks, we have to point it out that like they played probably one of their best games of the last probably month or 6 games or so that we've seen, and again, Quinn Ewers being hobbled, Quinn Ewers having the ankle issues led to some other struggles. But I think, the offensive line, I don't remember a single like procedural penalty, which has been a thing in the last couple of weeks. The one holding call, again, they're bailing dudes out who get their butts put in the dirt with some of these holding calls. I'm just saying, like, apparently you can't bury a defender anymore, but that's, maybe I'm old school, call me old, whatever you want to. Like that. Like the offensive line, I've had justifiable complaints and frustrations with them over the last month or so. They played really, really well on Saturday. And so as much as, and Gunnar Helm's a part of that, right? I think that's what makes, when you talk about Gunnar Helm getting drafted higher than Jatavian Sanders, I think part of that is because he's a better blocker than Jatavian Sanders ever showed on campus, right? He is that true dual threat tight end, if there is such a thing, right? If I'm going to coin that, right? Jatavian Sanders, an incredible athlete, incredible receiving tight end, but we saw whether it was a willingness issue where he didn't want to do it, or maybe when you look at his combine numbers, didn't put up the greatest bench press score in the world, so maybe it was a strength issue, right? Struggled blocking when it came to it. That's not Gunnar Helm's thing. Gunnar Helm is a willing and capable blocker. And so we saw some of that on Saturday. And that, to me, again, when you talk about his draft stock differentiator, there are a lot of athletic tight ends out there. There aren't a ton that can do both.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, the offensive line has definitely made progress, especially since the Georgia game. It's been slow, but they definitely have. I thought they played well in the Arkansas game. I thought they played well in this game. I think there might have been one procedural penalty on Cameron Williams. Always has like a 1 per game, it seems like. But other than that, yeah, I'm nitpicking. They played very well. And this was the best game rushing wise too. They got the most push they have all season versus, again, a good front like JJ Weaver, Deion Walker, and those guys are going to be top 120 picks in the NFL draft. Deion Walker, if he puts up free combine numbers, we're talking probably a first round pick. So they did a really good job. I mean, Trey Wisner had 158 yards. Jaden Blue had 96 yards. We can get to the negative on the Jaden Blue because we'll talk about that. But rushing wise, they've definitely, in my opinion, hit their stride. And I think Jaden Blue, honestly, just watching him, he looks way more explosive than he did earlier in the year. Early in the year, there was something off to him about me. Like he was missing that like 7th gear he always had. He always shifted into. He's definitely has that now. The fumbling issues, again, we'll get to. But other than that, like, the offense is clicking in all the right places, and that's what kind of sucks to me too and we'll just jump into the bad. The Quinn Ewers injury, because everything had starting to click other than like small things. But like Quinn was hitting the wide receivers when he needed to, even like the ball deep into the end zone to Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond had that and then got ripped out at the end. Trey Wisner, Jaden Blue are hitting their stride in the running game. The offensive line looks so, and then Quinn Ewers gets hurt, and you see a completely different player from that. And he was clearly, I think he wasn't even 50%. I think he was near that.
No.
Like, he did not look good. He did not want to step into throws, and I was begging Steve Sarkisian to take him out for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
But actually, you know what? We're going to go back to one more good here real quick, because we got to talk about that 15-play drive to finish the game, because that is a culture-building drive. Like, I wanted Quinn Ewers to come out of the game, but then you decide, you know what? We're just not even going to throw the football. We're going to run it 15 times in a row and score the touchdown. So what did you think about that?
Yeah, and not just the 15, but like they've done that now 2 weeks in a row, right? Because last week they had the 7-minute, almost 8-minute drive that effectively killed the game. It did kill the game, right? They converted on that 4th down to go into victory formation. So in 2 weeks, they've had game-ending culture drives that went for a cumulative 15 and a half minutes of game time, right? 8 minutes, almost 8.5 minutes this week, and 7.5 last week. That is huge, especially if Quinn Ewers is going to be struggling. It's an ankle sprain, they're saying. He will likely be limited on Saturday against A&M, but there has been a struggle to run the ball. We've talked about it. Now 2 weeks in a row against Arkansas's got some dudes on that defensive front. Kentucky's got some dudes on that defensive front. And Texas, when it was winning time, when it was, I call it GSD time, get done time, right? They were able to lean on the defense and push the ball down the field, drain clock. This week, they punched it in for a touchdown. Last week, they converted on a 4th and short to be able to go into victory formation. That is culture. That is what we want to see from the running game as Texas fans, right? And the coaches want to see it too. That is what this offense needs to be able to do. And they did it, right? When Sark says it, Sark said it multiple times, right? When you consider balance in an offense, it's not looking for a 50-50 share of play calling. It's being able to do what you want to do when you need to do it. Right. And so when we look at the balance in this offense, when they needed to run the ball to kill the clock 2 weeks in a row, conference opponents with defenses that have some dudes on the front, right, they were able to do it. So that, to me, I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, and he even mentioned the Florida game, and I agree. In that game, I think they went on a 6 or 7 minute drive. They didn't end up scoring, I don't believe, but they ran it a bunch of times with Jared Gibson. And they bled out the last 7 minutes. We saw that in the Alabama game last year. They bleed out the 7 minutes there. So they have been able to do that. And that's what I think is frustrating. And now we can get to the bad part, because there's this inconsistency of them being able to do it. So you can do it in the most important part of the game. Why can't you do it at the beginning of the game? Because if you put together, in my opinion, with this defense, if you're able to put together 4 consistent drives, scoring drives, 4 touchdowns, that's enough to beat, I think, 99% of teams in the country. I think 28 points is the number in my head of game's over. I don't see this defense giving up more than that. I just don't. So that's what's so bothersome about me. And that whole third quarter was just we went from first quarter and second quarter, which wasn't great, but it was B+ football. You get a 24-7 lead. And then the third quarter, Jesse Palmer hit on it. Texas is trying to give this game away. He said that after the Silas Bolden muff punt. That guy's been playing with fire all year, by the way, and it finally turned him. Hopefully he learns, because he's been playing with it the whole year. And, you have the Jaden Blue fumble. You have Jarrett Gibson come in, and he fumbles right away. Then you have Silas Bolden fumbling, and then you have Quinn Ewers not being able to really help out the situation because he's hurt. That whole third quarter was just a mess. So we needed that drive, like you said, at the end of the game. But it'd be nice to where we're not needing those drives at the end of the game, because we take care of business early and we hold on to the football. And this has been a reoccurring theme with Jaden Blue. I hit on the bye week earlier in the season, the first one. That Jaden Blue fumbled once every 40 touches in his career. That's receiving and catching. That's down now. I think it's once every 27 touches. That's unacceptable. You can't fumble. If you're going to get in college about 200 to 220 touches, that means with that average, you're going to be fumbling 9 times in a season. That's really bad. That's historically bad fumbling rate. So that has to get better. I know he was holding the football in the press conference. We'll see if that works. The old high school trick where carry around this football with your book bag through the school in the cafeteria while you're eating lunch, all that. But he needs to do something. I don't know what it is, but it's got to change.
Yeah, it didn't work for Jared Gibson apparently, because he was doing that 2 weeks ago, and so we saw that fumble on Saturdays. That to me there is nothing that will frustrate a fan, a coach, a player, a teammate more than it is basic football 101 from like Pop Warner. That's the number one thing as a running back, right? High and tight, multiple points of contact. And the one against Arkansas is a little excusable, I think. Backtracking 2 weeks is like, yes, you kind of have to sense that, but also you don't expect to get walked like that and somebody come from behind you and strip it. But this week, I don't know what it is, and Tashard Choice has got to figure it out. Like, he has been an incredible running back coach. I think he walked into a really advantageous position. He's done a great job recruiting. But whatever it is with these two guys, like, you've got to figure it out. And frankly, when the 3-star kid is playing better than you as a guy who, Jaden Blue was former number 1 running back in the class as a junior, right? Like, the 3-star kid from DeSoto is outplaying you in every facet of the game. So you've got to figure it out or you're going to get left behind. And I love Jaden Blue. I was a guy who picked Jaden Blue as one of my breakout stars for the year on a couple of things that I like. I thought he was going to be the dude because especially this was before the CJ Baxter injury. You bang on them with Baxter for three quarters, and then Jaden Blue comes in the fourth quarter and can catch an edge and outrun anybody. That was what I thought would happen before the injuries to the running back room. And so for me, that is the biggest red flag because it's not excusable, but you can get away with it against Arkansas and Kentucky. But we're going into College Station this weekend. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But like going into College Station this weekend, the fans are going to be all over you. It's going to be loud. It's going to be raucous. And A&M's a good team. Like there's no way around it. They got beat this weekend, but they're a good squad. They've got a great defense. And in the college football playoff, there's very little room for error. If Texas is able to do that, even the SEC championship game, it could be Georgia, whoever they're playing, right? We saw what happened against Georgia a couple weeks ago. So that to me is the biggest frustration. And then I'll say, and this is going to be my second like inflammatory statement of my time here. Sark's refusal or hesitance to pull Quinn Ewers when he needs to has been a frustrating point for me. And I get it. He's a quarterback guy. You don't want to create unnecessary controversy, especially with the specific backup quarterback that you have. Like the backup quarterback in Austin has been the most popular guy in history. Like I remember people when Vince Young struggled against OU calling from Matt Nordgren to come in and get some run. Like I'm old enough to remember that, right? So like for decades, the backup quarterback has been the most popular guy in Austin, Texas. But when the last name is Manning and it's who it is, right? That can get out of hand. But when your quarterback is hobbled, clearly hobbled, like dude could not move, could not push off that ankle, you're going to make a bad situation worse in about 10 different ways. And we saw that with the interception, strip fumble, whatever it might have been, right? Texas got off easy with that because there could have been multiple of those instances. Quinn could have exacerbated that ankle injury playing through. It's like, that to me is the biggest bad. It's like, does Sark need to reevaluate how he makes that choice, right? Because I love him to death, incredible, and like one of the smartest offensive minds in the game going. But like when it comes to making the quarterback decision, I feel like he's like a step or two too hesitant to make the switch when it needs to happen. Like you pulled him against Georgia, why not pull him here? Like that's just my issue.
Yeah, 100%. And this one's like more excusable because it's pretty clear he was hobbled and he couldn't really do much in the pocket. So I think that's pretty easy after the game. You're just like, yeah, he's hobbled. We wanted to get the more healthy guy out there. I don't even think that's like hard to say. Whereas the Georgia game, that was like, hey, I pulled him because, we were struggling. He wasn't doing very well. So yeah, I agree. I don't understand why he refuses to do that. Like I do agree. I think it has a lot to do with him being a quarterback because he knows what that feels like and knows what it takes to like when you get pulled, what you go through as a quarterback. So, but the thing is too, he was part of Nick Saban's tree, and Nick Saban, I mean, look what he did with Tua pulling him for Jalen, and then vice versa the next year in the SEC championship game. So, you have to know when to pull the cord. And heck, that may come this week versus Texas A&M. This is like basically a play-in game for the playoff. Like, if we lose, I still think we get in, but you're giving it up the chance at that point in the committee. If you win, you're going to be in the college football playoff. So this game, to me, if it's 17-14, you're winning, and Quinn Ewers just looks hobbled, and you need to make the decision, or it's 17-14, you're losing. And again, Quinn Ewers is hobbled. You need to make the decision. Make the decision. I know it's going to be a tough one, but if it's the right one, you got to do it. And then, yeah, the fumbling thing, I think Jaden Blue, unfortunately, I just think this is who he is at this point. I mean, we've seen it throughout his whole career. And like you said, it matters in the bigger games. Guys, it probably cost us the Washington game with CJ Baxter and Jaden Blue fumbling. Like, if they don't fumble in that game, I think we win that football game. So it really matters in the big-time football games because it's like tug of war. When you have tug of war with a 5-year-old on the other end, you can play around, do a little bit more, and you'll still win the tug of war. When you have a 250-pound guy there, you got to pull a little bit harder, and you got to make sure your grip's good because if you make a mistake, you're falling in that mud in the middle. So you got to be able to do the little things right, not turn the ball over, especially if you're going to turn the ball over, not turn it over on your side of the field like we saw versus Georgia, where you're giving them short fields and they're able to get automatic field goals or even 20-yard touchdown drives. You cannot do that versus this Texas A&M team because they are good enough to exploit that. If we play a clean enough football game, we should beat A&M. We're a better football team than A&M. That line will tell you that. Vegas will tell you that. My eyes tell me that. But the thing is, you have to play a clean game. This is going to be the most hectic environment I think any football team walks into all year, no matter where you're at in the country, even more than, Michigan going to Columbus this weekend. So it's going to be a tough task to do, and we're going to have to do the small things better in this football game to get it done.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk more in depth about that, but it is going to be wild this weekend, and there's very little room for error. One of my best friends is an A&M fan, and after their game, he said, "All right, screw it, it's spoiler time." And that's the attitude they're going to have.
Well, and the crazy thing is, even if they win this game, the SEC championship game, you're still in the college football playoff. So that game, honestly, really didn't mean that much.
Yeah.
It took away, I guess, your room for error of you could beat Texas, lose in the SEC championship game, and probably still make it. So that's gone. But if you went out, you still in. It doesn't matter. You got that automatic qualifier.